0 seconds. The Earth stops. No warning, no shaking. One moment, it's spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. The next, it isn't. You feel nothing. The ground is solid. The air is still. For exactly 1 second, everything seems completely normal. That second ends. 1 second later, the Earth stopped. You didn't. Everything on the surface was moving east at roughly 1,000 miles per hour. Cars, buildings, oceans, people, all of it is still carrying that speed with nothing left to push against. The ground beneath your feet has stopped, but your body is still moving east at the speed of a commercial jet. You get thrown, hard. Everyone does, simultaneously, across every continent. At the equator, the speed is 1,040 miles per hour. Move toward the poles and it drops. At the North Pole, angular momentum is 0, so someone standing there feels nothing at all. But almost nobody lives at the poles. The vast majority of the human population is currently airborne, moving east, and about to land on something. 5 to 10 seconds later. Skyscrapers are engineered for vertical load, the weight pressing straight down. A sudden sideways force at 1,000 miles per hour is simply a different category of problem. Steel frames shear at the joints, glass turns to powder. In Tokyo, the waterfront towers come apart floor by floor, each one collapsing into the next. In lower Manhattan, the financial district becomes an avalanche, glass, cable, concrete slabs, all of it moving east through the street grid. The Burj Khalifa, 2,700 feet tall, snaps near the base and falls. The entire structure hits the ground in under 15 seconds. Anything loose is a projectile: parked cars, shipping containers, construction cranes. The debris cloud from a single city block carries enough mass and speed to flatten everything downwind of it for miles. Getting through this requires being underground, inside reinforced concrete, nowhere near a city. The overwhelming majority of people are none of those things. 30 seconds later, the debris on the ground starts slowing. Friction does its work. Rubble, vehicles, and wreckage grind to a stop across whatever's left of the surface. The atmosphere keeps going. Air has been moving with the Earth for 4.5 billion years. There's no bedrock friction to slow it, no surface to drag against. While everything solid decelerates, the atmosphere continues east at full speed, an invisible wall of moving air planet-wide with nothing rotating beneath it anymore. The winds arrive. 1 minute later. For context, the strongest wind gust ever recorded was 253 miles per hour during Cyclone Olivia in 1996. It stripped trees to bare trunks. A Category 5 hurricane peaks around 180 miles per hour and leaves islands uninhabitable for years. What's moving now is close to 1,000 miles per hour. The Three Gorges Dam in China holds back a reservoir the size of a small sea. 39 billion cubic meters of water. The lateral pressure from the wind hits the dam face and it cracks. Within minutes, the structure fails completely. That reservoir empties downstream. The Yangtze Valley, home to tens of millions of people, gets hit by a wall of water hundreds of feet high moving at full speed. Wuhan, Nanjing, everything along that corridor is gone inside an hour. The George Washington Bridge loses its suspension spans. The cables snap, and the roadway drops into the Hudson. The Øresund Bridge between Denmark and Sweden folds at the pylons. Every long-span bridge on the planet fails in this window. The geometry that makes them work becomes the geometry that destroys them. Buildings that survive the first 10 seconds get stripped layer by layer. Roofs first, then walls, then frames. Whatever the wind carries becomes part of the wind. 5 minutes later, the winds keep going. One sustained global storm fed by the atmosphere's stored momentum, sweeping the surface continuously. Every power grid on Earth dies at once. Transmission towers down, substations buried, lines shredded. There's no damaged node to repair. The grid is simply gone, everywhere, all at once. Gas lines ruptured across thousands of miles start sparking. Fires break out across every major city simultaneously, burning through the rubble with no emergency services, no water pressure, no one to call. Anyone who survived the first minute by sheltering underground is now trapped beneath collapsed structures, in the dark, with fires spreading above them. Civilization stops functioning somewhere in this window, the infrastructure that keeps 8 billion people alive. Water treatment, food distribution, hospitals, communications. All of it requires power, and there is no power. 1 hour later, the winds are weakening. The immediate physical destruction is largely done. The oceans are just getting started. The water was moving east with everything else. Where it hits continental coastlines, it doesn't arrive as a single wave. It arrives as the entire ocean, still carrying eastward momentum, piling up against land with nothing to stop it. The eastern coastline of the United States takes the Atlantic head-on. Miami goes under first, then the Carolinas, then New York. The water comes up through the subway tunnels before it comes over the seawall, filling the underground network in minutes, then rising above street level, then above the second floor, then above the fifth. Lower Manhattan disappears. The Statue of Liberty is submerged to the torch. Bangladesh, sitting barely above sea level on a river delta facing the Bay of Bengal, is simply erased. 50 million people lived there. The water moves inland for hundreds of miles. In Japan, the Pacific coastline, already leveled by the winds, goes under waves moving fast enough to carry freight ships miles into the interior. The sea walls that survived the 2011 tsunami, some of them 60 feet tall, don't register as obstacles. The water doesn't quickly recede. It settles at whatever elevation the momentum carried it to, then drains slowly, pulling everything with it. Several hours later, the crust has been under stress since the moment the Earth stopped. The planet's rotation created a slight equatorial bulge. The Earth is not a perfect sphere. It's wider at the middle because of the spin. That spin is gone. The bulge starts adjusting. Combined with the sudden redistribution of ocean weight and the shock transmitted through the crust from hours of surface destruction, fault lines that were under manageable tension begin to give. Earthquakes open up across every major tectonic boundary at once. The Ring of Fire, running from New Zealand up through Japan, across to Alaska, down the American west coast, activates along its entire length. The Cascadia Fault off the Pacific Northwest, which geologists have been warning about for decades, finally goes. Seattle and Portland, already wrecked by the winds, drop several feet as the ground shifts. Mount Rainier, destabilized, begins erupting. In Indonesia, simultaneous eruptions across Java and Sumatra push ash columns 50 miles into the upper atmosphere. The sky, already dark from debris and smoke, gets darker still. 1 day later. The winds have dropped to survivable levels. The earthquake frequency is declining. The tsunamis have largely settled. A few people are alive. Researchers at Antarctic stations, some of whom felt almost nothing during the initial stop, are now picking up signals from the surface, or rather, the absence of signals. Every city on Earth has gone dark. The ones with radio equipment are transmitting into silence. In the Swiss Alps, a handful of people sheltering in mountain bunkers built during the Cold War are intact. The elevation kept them above the worst of the winds and the water. They have food, water, and no idea what they're going to do next. The valleys below them are buried. What's left of the surface looks nothing like Earth. Coastal cities are underwater or buried under sediment. Inland cities are rubble fields with fires still burning through them. The atmosphere carries so much ash, smoke, and pulverized concrete that sunlight is filtered to a dim gray. Temperatures have already started dropping from the particulates blocking the sun, the same effect that follows a major volcanic eruption, but multiplied across the entire planet. 2 to 3 days later. Without rotation, the Coriolis effect disappears. This is the mechanism that gives Earth's weather its structure, the spin that turns moving air into rotating storm systems, that drives the jet streams, that distributes rainfall across the continents. Gone. Air starts moving in straight lines from the equator toward the poles. The Amazon rainforest, which generates its own weather through evaporation, and the Coriolis-driven moisture cycle, begins drying out within days. The Congo Basin does the same. Meanwhile, the Sahara starts receiving rain. The new straight-line airflow is dumping tropical moisture directly over desert terrain that hasn't seen significant rainfall in recorded history. Nothing is adapted for this. The few surviving plants and animals in the interior regions that escaped the winds and water now face a climate that is rearranging itself from scratch. 1 week later, the ocean is moving again, and this time it's permanent. While the Earth was spinning, centrifugal force held ocean water toward the equator. Sea level at the equator was roughly 13 miles higher than at the poles because of this. With the rotation gone, that water has nowhere to be held. It starts draining toward the poles. The seafloor near the equator begins emerging, first as shallow shoals, then as mudflats, then as exposed open ground. The Malacca Strait, one of the busiest shipping channels in the world, is now a muddy plain. The shallow parts of the South China Sea are gone. In the middle of what used to be ocean, the skeletons of cargo ships that sank during the initial chaos are sitting upright on exposed seabed, rusting in open air. Any survivors near the equatorial coasts who had found higher ground above the initial tsunami are now watching the ocean retreat away from them. Miles of seafloor are visible where open water was a week ago. The smell, rotting marine life, salt, methane from disturbed sediment is overwhelming. At the poles, the opposite is happening. The new water is flooding the ice sheets. What's left of Arctic research stations goes under. 2 weeks later, the equatorial seafloor has dried enough to walk on in places. It's a continuous ring of dead land circling the entire planet. Barren, salt-crusted, completely flat, with the occasional wreck of a ship or the corroded top of an undersea cable station breaking the surface. The polar oceans have expanded to roughly the latitude of northern Spain and the tip of Argentina. Everything above those lines is now ocean. London is underwater. Stockholm is underwater. The northern half of Canada is a sea. A small number of survivors are moving. Some have started following river valleys inland and upward, looking for elevation and fresh water. In the Himalayas, a group of mountaineers who were above 20,000 feet during the initial event, high enough that the air moved around them rather than through them, and far enough inland to miss the tsunamis, are descending carefully into a valley that used to hold a city of 300,000 people. The city is gone. The valley has a thin stream running through it and some standing trees on the northern slope. They're looking at what might be the most habitable place left in Asia. 3 weeks later, the Earth still orbits the Sun. One full orbit still takes 1 year. The difference is that without rotation, the planet no longer cycles through day and night on a 24-hour schedule. One side faces the Sun continuously, the other faces away. Day and night now last 6 months each. The sunlit side starts heating. Slowly at first, a few extra degrees after the first week, manageable. But there's no night to cool it down. No darkness to let the ground release heat back into the atmosphere. The temperature just keeps climbing day after day, with the sun sitting in the same position in the sky. 3 weeks in, temperatures on the equatorial supercontinent are pushing 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Water left in open containers evaporates within hours. The surviving plant life, already stressed from the atmospheric collapse and weeks of gray sky, begins dying from heat. 1 month later, the sunlit hemisphere is approaching 200 degrees Fahrenheit in the most exposed regions. Water boils on the surface. The land is cracked and scorched, the sky above it filled with steam that rises, migrates toward the terminator line, and falls as rain or snow on the cooler side. The dark hemisphere is at minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping. The ground is frozen solid. Carbon dioxide is beginning to freeze out of the atmosphere in the coldest regions. The air itself is thinning. Between these two zones, there's a strip a few hundred miles wide where the temperature is survivable. The terminator line, where day meets night, where the sun sits permanently on the horizon. It moves slowly as the Earth orbits the sun, completing one full circle of the planet over the course of a year. The survivors who figured this out are moving with it. Small groups traveling on foot across the equatorial supercontinent, carrying whatever they could find. They're following the only habitable strip left on Earth, watching the scorched wasteland approach from one side and the frozen darkness close in from the other. The strip is maybe 300 miles wide. It's getting narrower. The new Earth. Some things are fine. microbes at deep-sea hydrothermal vents, organisms that feed on heat and mineral chemistry from the seafloor, that never needed sunlight or weather or a 24-hour day, are completely unaffected. The stopping of Earth's rotation means nothing to them. They were here before complex life existed, and they'll be here long after. Everything else is running out of time. Every animal on Earth evolved across hundreds of millions of years on a 24-hour cycle. Sleep, hormone production, immune function, cell repair, all of it is governed by circadian biology locked to that cycle. The cycle is gone. Even the people in the twilight strip, physically surviving the temperature, are experiencing what happens when that internal clock has nothing to sync to. Immune systems weaken, cognition degrades, reproductive biology shuts down. The planet still exists. It still has an atmosphere, liquid water, and enough chemical complexity to support life somewhere. It's just that the life it can now support is not the life currently trying to survive on it.